Okay, then we can go ahead, let's go
We
ahead
can go ahead and get started then? Okay.
because it's all taken.
All right. Do you, any introductions on your part?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
No,
Welcome,
not
everybody.
that you need to introduce me. I didn't mean that.
Oh, right, no, just welcome. I kind of saw most of you up in the office, but thank you for coming, and we do have our presenter from Thomas Jefferson High School for Science and Technology. So let's welcome you, and thank you for coming.
No problem. My name is Jeremy Sugar. I'm the Director of Admissions for TJ. And I have a brief presentation this morning to be able to share some information about the school. Part of the reason why I'm out here, what you can expect, I'm going to present this from the perspective of a student that is a rising 8th grader next year. Maybe some things to think about as we go over the summer and into that. Certainly I'll stay here and answer any questions that you may have. I'm sure there are some questions in relationship to the school. Some of the things that I'll talk about is how we are the same as other high schools, whether it be here in Loudoun County or Fairfax County or any other public school for that matter. I will even perhaps talk a little bit about how we're the same and how we're different from the academy program that you have here in Loudoun. I'm certainly not an expert on the academy programs, being an educator in Fairfax, but I do have some knowledge. I know the principal from the academies because she actually used to work with us at TJ. And yet there are differences, and I will also be able to share some information about the differences and kind of what those programs, at least from a TJ perspective, what those programs are. So really I think the biggest thing that people want to know about TJ is, why is TJ different? Why would someone share information with you that's in Fairfax County? And the first part of this is, back in the mid-1980s, in 1985, Fairfax County decided to create, or actually transition a school. It was an existing high school at that point in time, and we transitioned it to a science and technology school. Part of that process was having it recognized and going through the process of making what's called a regional governor school. And what that means is that as a regional governor school, we serve a region within the state. Now, we are the only four-year full academic high school in the state. And what that means is that a student that applies and ultimately attends TJ will enter in 9th grade and will go there for the full time, every day for 4 years. And they will graduate from TJ. That's different than a lot of the other regional governor school programs. Many of those programs are summer programs or partial programs. There are different programs throughout the state that focus on different areas. Our focus is science and technology. Because we're a regional governor school, because of that relationship, we actually open it up to all the jurisdictions in Northern Virginia. Now, many of those choose to participate and some do not. Right now we have 5 jurisdictions, counting Fairfax County, that participate with Thomas Jefferson. Loudoun's one of them, but we also have students that apply and ultimately attend TJ from Arlington, Prince William County, and the city of Falls Church. Other jurisdictions are not eligible to apply and ultimately attend unless their school board makes a decision to move in that direction. They're invited to, and many years ago we used to have Fauquier County, but they actually built and designed their own program, and we saw less and less students choosing to apply and ultimately attend from Fauquier, and ultimately the school division decided to no longer participate with TJ. But we do have a large number of students from Loudoun that go through that application process. The application process is no different for a Loudoun County student than it is for a student that's in Fairfax or Prince William, whether that's a public school student or a private school student, which would include even students who are at homeschool. All students have to go through an application. We have one application or one entry point, which is at the beginning of the year. So we have students that enter at the beginning of their freshman year. We do have a smaller application round for sophomores who are entering in their sophomore year, as well as an even smaller number of students that enter even in their junior year. We do not have applicants that come into our school in their senior year. The other thing is kind of what we're offering in terms of courses. My understanding is that the high schools here in Loudoun County are advanced placement schools. In Fairfax, we have 2 primary educational programs that we offer to our students, the advanced placement and the international baccalaureate. TJ offers the IB program. But all of our core academic areas are taught at an honors level or beyond. And what I mean by that is that we offer a significant amount of advanced placement courses, but those are no different than the local high school that you would attend here. So even if you don't go to TJ or you don't go to any other school and you just naturally progress from Harper Park into the high school, it's the same AP courses that are often offered at all these different places. We're offering those same courses. So it's not as though you're getting something different or better or worse in that aspect, right? It's still the same curriculum, it's still the same test, which is actually being administered right now across the nation in terms of the AP exams. Over this past 2 weeks is when those schools have been offering the courses. What might be a little bit different is we actually have courses that go beyond AP. We have courses where students are enrolled or at such an advanced level that we no longer actually have those type of curricular pieces that are in a traditional high school. What I can comfortably say is we have never had a student run out of math at TJ. That's not always the case for some students at some of the other high schools. They may be advanced to the extent that when they enter in 9th grade, they've already completed calculus. And so what are they going to do for the next 4 years? And we definitely have avenues for those students to be able to move forward and still be able to engage in appropriate mathematics. And the thing that I think that really starts to separate us out is our research. We actually start our research in our freshman year. It's called an IBIT class. It's an integrated biology, English, and technology. It's 3 classes in one, and all of our students are required to take it. And it actually is a very comprehensive class in the fact that these 3 teachers frequently will work together. They're actually grouped together, and it allows the students to engage in very different ways, potentially engaging in that research that a traditional standard high school schedule or timing schedule. You know, if you think about that, most classes are about 90 minutes. It's a 90-minute block, and it rotates through some form of rotational space over a 2-day schedule. So it's an A-B schedule, blue, red, whatever your colors are, or name nomenclature that the school provides. But the point is that we have that same type of schedule for 4 days a week. On Mondays, all of our classes meet, except for our 8th period, and I'll get to that in a little bit. But then on Tuesdays and Thursdays, we have the same set of 4 classes, and on Wednesdays and Fridays, we have the other 4 classes. But during the IBIT class, one of the things that you get is you get to see students that are actually engaged in all kinds of different levels of research. Here in a couple of weeks, those freshman students will actually be presenting their independent research, or actually a freshman is group research, to the school community within their own classrooms. And this is called the TJ START program. And we've made some changes over time, but it lays the foundation for these students to be able to move forward within that process. And what you actually are seeing here is some of the different things that are done by not only the freshmen, also our middle-classmen or upperclassmen, as well as our senior research. Here you're seeing the robotics portion of the technology piece of the IBIT class. You're seeing students that are actually out in the field. We'll take the students on a day, and it's not necessarily a field trip. They'll walk to the park or whatever the case may be, and they'll actually collect samples or specimens while they're out in the field. That's rather difficult for a traditional science class in a high school, because it's about getting them out to the field and being able to do what it is that they need to do. In that IBIT class, because it's 3 classes compressed into one, they actually have that full amount of time to be able to go out and do things. You also are seeing students in the various labs. Here's the oceanography lab, a student with the octopus. Here is neuroscience, and this one was, I believe an engineer had come in and was talking about alternative fuel concepts in terms of automation. And so our students are engaged in a variety of different ways, and they start that foundation in 9th grade and they work their way through to their seniors. And ultimately, in their senior year, they're going to choose, in the end of their junior year, they're going to choose what research they want to do. So over the summer, heading into their senior year, they're going to start to begin the foundations of their research. And then throughout the senior year, they're actually doing their research in the lab and having the lab director kind of help guide them through that process. It is not prescriptive. And what I mean by that is that the lab director is not here to say, this is the research that we're going to study, or this is the topic we're going to study next year in this particular class. And you need to come and check off which one you want to do next year. The students actually come in and they present their own ideas and say, this is what I want to study. And the director or teacher is there to help them find the resources and kind of guide them through and either kind of expand what it is that they're looking to do because it may be too narrow, or it may be more to refine because they're too broad. And so they guide them through that process. At the same time, this is all going on within the school day. It's all going in within kind of that same type of structure. This is typically what we would call an elective type of course, because the entire time they're also still receiving their full high school academic curriculum. So they're still getting their Englishes, they're still getting their histories. Obviously, we're going to provide plenty of math and science, but students still take PE and other electives. Every so often you hear some band instruments that are being played. We have band students that do those things. We have art and world languages that are available. Some of the other things that we have that's a little bit different, and I'll get to the 8th period here in a little bit, but we kind of structure our days a little bit different. All of our students eat lunch at the same time in the building, and quite honestly, most of them don't even eat in the cafeteria. They eat throughout the building. It's more of a campus-style setting in terms of that area. They have time to be able to go from one class to the other. And the 8th period is a rather unique class in terms of it's an academic class that is focused on activities and clubs. And what we recognize is that students, say for example, that live in this community, it's a long way to go to TJ. And clubs and activities at most high schools, and certainly at the middle schools as well, these are types of things that happen after school. So they're at conflict with students who may want to also be in sports. They're at conflict for students that maybe want to in drama programs, or perhaps the music, any of the fine and performing arts. And on top of that, it may be a conflict because of distance, because of transportation, right? So we have bus transportation, or Loudon provides bus transportation to TJ, but they don't have late buses. And so if the student's going to catch the bus and ride at the bus home, they have to be able to get that at the end of the day. In most schools, those activities, those events occur afterwards, right? So if that's the case, that might be a part of the school that I'm not able to participate in. In addition, one of the other great concepts that go around this is the fact that this course also allows the student to go back to the teacher to re-engage with any assistance that may be needed. And it can be teacher with student or a group of students. It can be peer tutoring is also available. And that goes both ways, right? So it can be where I need help because of a concept that I'm struggling with. But it also may be that I'm an upperclassman and I want to give back to to other students that may be struggling in a concept that is really strong for me. And so I'm a part of the peer tutoring on the other end. And so it allows students to have twice a week to be able to engage in clubs, events, activities, but it also allows those students to engage with the teachers, to further have a better understanding of what it is that they may have a struggle, because most of the students that walk into the doors in TJ have never struggled academically. They just haven't because of where they've been at. And at some point in time throughout their 4 years, they may run into a concept that they're like, no, I just don't quite get this the way that I think that I need to. And 8th period is a wonderful part of that, and it's a wonderful opportunity for us to be able to do this. We are unique in that we're an application school. It's not a private school. We're a public school. There's no tuition. You're not paying to go to TJ. And most schools that are like us don't have all the other options and opportunities that schools have. We have a full program of extracurricular activities for the students to be able to participate in. Any sports program that Fairfax County offers in all of our high schools, Thomas Jefferson has as well. So we do have a football team. We do have baseball. We do have, thinking of spring, track and softball, lacrosse, soccer. Maybe we don't do quite as well in the team sports as we do in the individualized sports, but we actually do quite well. We have a number of state championships, and those seem to come in maybe not on an annual basis, but on a pretty close on an annual basis. Our tennis teams are really good, our golf teams are really good. So there's a lot of things that we offer. Prom, right? This is prom season at high schools. We have a prom. We have homecoming in the fall. We have the stage production and performances. We have award-winning band, ensembles and marching band programs. So what I'm trying to get at is that a student that chooses to go to TJ is not sacrificing those things that make them who they are as well. They may really be that academic student that loves engineering or computer programming or whatever it happens to be, but they also love to play basketball, or they also love to sing, or they also love to, and it's whatever your child wants to do. We have those types of things that we can provide to the students, so they're not sacrificing and giving those up. They don't have to only play an instrument at home or whatever the case may be. So what does a TJ applicant look like? Typically what we're finding in terms of the students that are looking at TJ as a high school option or opportunity is these have been students who have been highly successful in academics. They're engaged in school. School, for the most part, probably comes fairly easy for them. They do look for that challenging courses. They probably are starting to get more and more advanced, specifically in the math programs, in the math subject area. They are a risk taker when it comes to academics. Meaning, and what I mean by that is they're willing to kind of push themselves to try to learn more. It is a part of who they are. The other thing that I think is really important to recognize and point out is that students that want to go to TJ want to be there because they are interested in something within STEM. They like science, they like technology, they like engineering or math. This is what defines them as a student. And that's not to say that the students that love the arts and humanities are any less loving of school and whatever the case may be, and may be very successful. And we have those programs to support those interests for the students as well. But what we're looking for and what the match is that those students are really intrigued by something within STEM. And that's a really important aspect because of what they have to do. Students have to be in 8th grade. They have to enroll to be able to enter 9th grade. We don't allow students to skip 8th grade. That is a question that we get asked from time to time. Can we skip and move on based upon where we're at academically? And the answer to that is no. They also have to live in one of the participating jurisdictions, which I talked about earlier. And they have to, at a minimum, be in algebra in 8th grade. Those are our kind of baseline minimums. Academically, they need to be at a 3.0 GPA, which is a B average, and that's part of the application process for them to be able to move forward. But as long as they meet these minimums, they're eligible to apply and move forward within that process. So, what does the process look like? It's a kind of a two-part process. The first part is the application, and what I would truly say is that's a registration. You're really registering to take the test that we administer. Okay? The application window is open in September. We will open it up on Labor Day afternoon. I think that's September 3rd, I believe, if my date's right. We'll open it up on that day, and then it will stay open for a month. So for 4 weeks, the application window will be open. That will allow the student to be able to go through that process of actually applying. And parents, yes, it is the student that is applying. It is not you that is applying. You will have your part within the application process, but we do want the students to start the application. The next part of that is really about selecting where they're going to take the test in November. And I believe the date is Saturday, November 9th. I think actually I have it on a slide here later, so don't hold me to some of these dates as I'm trying to remember what it is in like 7 months from now. But in November, we actually administer the exams, and it's these 3 exams that we administer on that date. It is a math test, a reading test, and a science test. The math is the QuantQ. It's a quantitative reasoning test. There is very limited information out there in terms of test prep specifically to the Quant Q. The makers of that particular test do not release their test items, and they do not share it with the publishers that build like test prep books. So that's why I'm saying there is very limited. I do get the question of, well, what can I do? How can my son or my daughter prepare? And what I would say is that looking at the utilization and understanding of the math concepts that they currently are learning, whether that's in algebra or geometry, depending upon where they're at now and next year, is really, it's about the application of and understanding of math skills. There are other prep programs for other math that could be used to kind of help give an idea of where they're at. For the ACT Aspire, and maybe it's actually using the ACT as an example, the ACT Aspire Reading and Science is the early high school versions. There are some prep materials. ACT actually has some prep materials that are available on their website, and you can go out there and they release some samples or give you some ideas of the type of questions or test content that's out there for all of these. For these three tests, this is what we call our semifinalist rank. And here's actually what it measures. So I know some people are taking pictures and we have some recording here. This is actually the subject area that it measures. Each of these tests are about an hour in length. So it's about 3 hours of testing on that Saturday morning with some breaks in between. And the ideas are really about trying to gather where the students are academically. Okay, so I'm going to move to the next page here. Saturday, November 9th. That's great. Okay, for those students that do have accommodations or special education needs, we do provide accommodations. That happens on Friday, November 15th. For those students that become semifinalists, semifinalists is determined about how well you performed on the test and what your grades are. As long as you meet the minimums, you move on within the process. So for those students that are semifinalists, we will release our semifinalist notification in January after the test scores have been returned back to us. And then we turn around and release that information out and say, yes, congratulations, you are a semifinalist, or unfortunately, you are not a semifinalist and here are your scores. If you're a semifinalist, we ask you to do really two primary things. One is we ask you to ask two teachers to write recommendations. Your role, or the student's role within this, is to identify which two teachers they are. Let us know through our application system, and then we reach out to the teachers to have them put the teacher recommendation into our application for the student. Okay? That's really what that process is. It's not a problem for the students to ask the teachers ahead of time, and I'll get to your question in just a moment. But the teachers then have more time beyond that time frame to be able to write them. So we have deadlines for the teachers, we have deadlines for the students to be able to get the information into it. Teachers can be current this year 7th grade teachers, right? Or they can be next year's teachers in 8th grade. And it's really in January, February time frame, that teacher has had enough experience with the students to be able to write a solid recommendation. If we had teacher recommendations due in September, quite frankly, the 8th grade teachers would not know your child well enough at that point in time, or would be very unlikely to know your child well enough at that point in time to be able to write a solid recommendation. So that's part of the reason why we waited until this point in time. The other part that we ask the students is to return back to their testing site and complete the final portion of the application, which is what we call our student information sheet and essay. The student information sheet is 3 short answer questions that really get at why they want to go to TJ. What have they done? What do they want to do in the future? And the essay is a problem-solving essay based on math or science content with multiple variables that they have to solve the problem. And then they have to tell us how they've solved the problem answering that question. Those 5 components, the teacher recommendations, the student information sheet questions, the essay, the performance on the test scores, and their grades, making up the 5 components, are what we use in terms of our evaluation and the package for the students that are applying to TJ. Okay? And that is administered at a variety of different test sites. We have 3 of which here in Howell County on February 8th. Okay? What would we suggest that the students do? Knowing that we have, 3 weeks left of school here in Loudoun County, so there's not a lot of time left. We're probably in the midst of SOLs, so academically there's probably not a lot of things that are left to remain within the school year. So there's not a lot of change that's going to happen now, right? They're probably pretty close to what they are for this year. But it's about understanding that I can make a difference next year in 8th grade. I can continue to drive forward. It's about choices, about where we're at. How well am I going to challenge myself? Continually doing well in school. Being a positive, being positively engaged within the classroom. Making those connections with the teachers. These are all those types of things that we recommend that they can do. What we would recommend over the summer is not the advancement in math. We get a lot of questions about, should I take an entire math course over the summer to try to accelerate? My honest opinion is that is for a very select few students that can do that well, and that works for them in the aspect that they're able to gather all of that information in about 4 weeks of what is usually taught in 9 months. And think about that. That's what a summer class is. It's usually a 4 or 5 week program compared to an 8 or a 9 month program, and so you're consolidating. And it's in some cases it becomes much more surface layer and surface level instruction in terms of that. And for some students, that's not enough. And it may not impact them at the moment. It may impact them in 11th grade when they don't understand the level of depth of a particular subject area. So we don't recommend acceleration. There are a few students that is fine and they can handle it. You know your child, I do not. What we actually recommend is that they get involved in STEM opportunities over the summer. If they're a student that loves robotics or programming, doing something within robotics and programming, doing something that is engaging within the field or the area in which they're interested in. Those are the types of things that we recommend. I know that Parks and Rec here in Loudoun County have a wide variety of things that are offered, although probably many of them are at a cost. Certainly those are things to take a look at. There are free things that are out there that students can be engaged in, and certainly that's that might be preferable to you as well. But let's start to look at those types of things that are out there and available. We would recommend that they read, and we're not talking about Instagram and Twitter and those things. We're talking about regular reading. The more that they read, the better they're going to become at writing. Same thing with practicing their math and continuing to move forward. So here's your calendar. I'll leave this up for just a moment. This is of the important dates. I was wrong when I said September 3rd and September 2nd. The application deadline is September 27th, and then this would be an important day in terms of testing. So your important days for the bulk of students is going to be September 27th, November 9th, February 8th, and then we will release decisions no later than April 30th. This year we actually were able to release decisions at the beginning of the month or the end of March. But our target depends on kind of weather-related events. So that'll be up there as well. This information is posted on our website. We already have this information up for freshman winter round. I know that we had a question here in front, and I'll open it up to some other questions. I went through that rather quickly, so yes.
All through this would be in our website, the slides.
Yes.
I can also send this to you as a PDF, so that way you can make it available.
We can make it available, and we will have the video portion available too. And you can send that. Yes, we'll try to make everything available.
Okay. Yes. Question.
So I don't have a question actually. I have more of a request. Please, always okay with that.
Oh, okay.
Because you have all these parents who are interested in TJ. You know that Loudoun County is thinking of cutting the cord with TJ. Yes. So if you want more information, because there are a bunch of parents that are trying to fight this, because we love TJ. Right. Doing this for my son who wants to do neurosurgery, But please, we need the parents to email the school board members, especially the ones that are undecided. They have all kinds of excuses, but none of them make sense, honestly. Right. So if you need more information, please get back to me. I'll take your email, I'll send you information. But May 28th is when they are making that decision. And right now, this could go down south. So we really need to push.
So you mean they're not going to
It's
provide
a yearly
the
contract.
transportation?
No. It's a yearly
No, they
contract.
might not renew the contract, which means no one from Loudoun
Our
County
kids
can
won't go
go.
at all.
Do you know
So
anything about that?
I can answer it from our perspective for Loudoun. You're right, it is an annual contract. And so an annual, what it means is no new applicants, no new cohort of students would come through if Loudon chooses to not continue with that process. And it is something that has been up for discussion. I know it was brought up and it was something that has happened over the past few years, and it is something that's coming up as a discussion point here at the end of the month on May 28th. So we're talking like 2 weeks out. Now, what their decision is whether to continue. If you have an older child, that child will continue and finish off TJ. It's whether or not they would enter or allow a new set of cohort of students to go in. From a Fairfax County perspective or from a TJ perspective, we want Loudon to be a part of it. We think that it brings tremendous amounts of opportunities and diversity within our school and our community in terms of where students are coming from, what's going on. Loudon students are extremely successful at TJ, and so we certainly welcome them to come. We can't make that force for you. We share information with board members as they have questions with the county as a whole, and I think that we have had a very positive relationship. But at the end of the day, it is your school board's decision and your individual board members' decision of which way they want to go and which way they're going to ultimately decide. And so, if you feel strongly one way or the other, and I won't pass judgment on which way you feel, that's the only way to enact that is to actually let your board member know. This is how I feel. This is why it's important to me, whether we go in one direction or the other. And I can't tell you which way that you do. Go with that. But I can tell you this: if you don't share that information, they can't speak on your behalf because they don't know. And that's kind of the politics of what happens.
I do want to add one last thing. So this past Tuesday, we had over 50 kids, 7th graders, past TJ, current TJ, wanting to go to TJ, talk at the school board meeting in front of all these guys. They did so well, it is amazing. However, we are in the Catoctin district. Our school board member is not decided, so is the Leesburg, Mr. Tom Marshall, and we need to convince them. Because right now we have 4 no's and we have 2 yeses. So we need those 2 yeses. Otherwise, it's over.
So, and what I will say that is if the school board decides to withdraw, my presentation this morning unfortunately would not apply to Loudoun County students that are rising 8th graders or next year are rising 9th graders.
So if they make decision this year, then Loudoun County is not going to go back and participate. It's going to be
For next year.
Oh yeah, and one more thing.
Yeah, but the next year.
Yeah, next year if they decide that they
More
will
than
not-
likely, once they say no, they will in future say no.
No, that's not true actually. So here's the thing. Election is coming up in November and a lot of these guys are going away and new ones are coming in. All the new ones are supporting TJ. So if they say no, it's going to be our kids that are going to be messed up.
No.
Yeah.
So you need to ask your friends, family, everyone to come to the May 28th board meeting and fight for this.
Say yes.
And where is
It's in the Loudoun County School Board,
Yeah,
so
just give
she
me
has
an
all the
email.
info.
I'll send you the information.
Yeah, so what I would say is if you
Yes.
want to continue that discussion, I think it's totally appropriate for this kind of event, to have that conversation.
You want your children
Right.
to go to TJ, so you definitely are the supporters.
So, but aside from that piece, and certainly I can answer any questions from our perspective that's appropriate. Are there other questions in terms of the presentation or in terms of application and so on?
the teacher recommendation you said it's like from one teacher or all?
Okay, so the teacher recommendation for our purpose is a little bit different than what it is for the academy program. And I mentioned I would talk a little bit about how we are the same or how we're different from the academies. So I'll mention this and then I'm going to expand back a little bit to kind of share a little bit of information. So our teacher recommendations are a little bit more open. And what I mean by that is we have one required teacher that has to be a math or a science teacher, and it's either in 7th or 8th grade. So we have a more open option for you. So for most students, that's 4 different teachers that they have to choose from. Then the other teacher recommendation is a student choice, meaning the student can choose any 7th or 8th grade teacher. To be able to write that recommendation. It might be another math or science teacher, but it might be their English teacher, it might be their history teacher. I don't suppose it would be their PE teacher, but it could potentially be their PE teacher, right? To be honest with you, I'm not sure I've seen a PE teacher ever write a recommendation for us, but there are other teachers that have written high quality recommendations. I think you have a class that's called FACS, right? And so your FACS teachers, one of the strongest recommendations I've ever read, actually came from a FACS teacher, or a teacher that taught that type of class. I don't necessarily know that it was allowed. And the point, what they were providing to us was that the student that was in here was so engaged, not only in that class, but just in kind of the science and scientific investigation. They compared all the cooking elements to, it was a science experiment every time they stepped foot into the kitchen. And you know, the teacher was able to relay that information so well about the student that you could actually see how that student was within this. That's an obvious in a science class because that's the content, right? We're talking about those types of things. That's more obvious in a math class. It's not as prevalent in some of these other classes unless that's really who that student is. And that was actually a tremendous recommendation that we had seen at one point in time. So what I'm saying is it's not always, does it have to be two science or two math teachers. It can be a science and math teacher and another teacher. That's a little bit different from my understanding of what the academies have had in the past. I don't know, things change.
You have to have your current math and science teacher.
Right. So in 8th grade. So if your son or daughter, and let's say that everything stays, and you got an allowed stays, your son or daughter is choosing to apply to both and is at the point where they would have recommendations for both, please also recognize that your teachers here, particularly the 8th grade teachers, the math and science teachers in 8th grade, might be writing two recommendations for the student. One for TJ, one for the academy program, whether that's the science program or the engineering program. As well as there may be writing a lot of recommendations for others. So part of our recommendation process is we give you some flexibility. We also give a window of opportunity. And what I would say is that there's no problem for teachers or for students to actually talk to the teachers ahead of time, but they can't actually ask for the recommendation officially through the system until they become a semifinalist. Okay, so they have to be a semifinalist prior to. So the night that we release decisions, one semifinalist, at the same time that we release the decisions, opens up the portals for the students to be able to enter the information in for the teachers. They have a week to be able to enter the information in for the teachers, and the teachers have about 4 weeks to be able to actually complete the full recommendations. Okay? And going back and kind of expanding it, one of the primary differences between TJ and the academy program is kind of the structure and the design. The academy program wasn't designed to replicate TJ. It was designed to be something different. Not better or worse, but different. TJ is a full program, meaning you receive all of your content, all of your instruction for 4 full years every day at TJ. The academy programs are what we would call an A-B schedule, meaning that you'll go to the academies, if you're unfamiliar with them, on an A or a B day, and you would attend your primary high school or your base high school on the opposite day. So certain courses would be taught at the academy program, and the other courses would be taught at your base school. So those are different things. Transportation is taken care of within the county. Transportation to TJ is taken care of within the county as well. It's what I would refer to as a depot system, meaning they come to a hub or a depot, a place to pick up and drop off, as opposed to door to door. That's slightly different, but it certainly does work. And we do have transportation, or Loudon has provided transportation for their students. So those are some differences. I would encourage you to look at the program differences or the program similarities, because there are things that are offered that are the same at both places, but there are also things that aren't offered at both places. And so, depending upon what your son or daughter is interested in, they may want to look at both of those. And I would encourage you, the greatest thing, and I've said this for years, and I don't know if I've said this and you've been here or not, but I've said this for years. You are blessed by having more opportunity. Students in Fairfax don't have an additional academy program. We do have academy programs, but this is different than what your academy of engineering, your academies allow. It was, our programs, our academy programs were more like Monroe Tech before they moved. But you have the options. Your child has an option of the academy programs here in Loudoun. They have the option of TJ. They have their option of their regular high school and the course offerings and opportunities that all of these different places have and afford. And I would encourage you to engage and understand what options are available for them as they're entering into high school. Coming here this morning is certainly one of those steps in being able to. But certainly in September, I would encourage you when they have, and I know those they don't happen as often, or at least in the past they haven't happened as often, but I would encourage you to go to the presentation on the Academies of Loudoun, finding out more about it. If you're not as familiar with the program, some of you may be very familiar, but if you're not, find out about it. I'll be back out, or one of my colleagues will be back out, whether we're here at Harper Park or in one of the other schools. We hit a bunch of different schools in the fall over the course of about a month during the application window, or before. And we go out and we are even more in depth than what I provided up here. We provide more information about the application process itself and what you need to do. And we walk you through kind of those step by step, which I didn't put up here because that was 4 months away. So do you have other questions about the school or the application process itself?
Between now and May 28th, are you presenting a similar presentation in any other location in Loudoun?
At this point in time, I am not making any other presentations next week in Loudoun County.
Because we want to engage more of these people,
Sure.
because May 28th is do or die.
I understand. We come at an invitation, so we were invited to come out, and I believe you actually invited folks from other schools. Is that correct? Was that
Right, I don't know if anybody came, we invited 3 other schools, parents. Did anybody come from another
Yeah.
school? Okay, yeah, we invited 3 other schools around the area. Parents.
What are you looking for?
The test.
Oh,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Next.
I can move it back and forth. It's fine. Like I said, I'll send it as a PDF, and then you can have it.
Thank you.
But no, I mean, we are in some other schools. I have not done any other presentations about this spring. Yeah.
How schools have opportunity to apply for teaching grade 8, and if they fail to do so, do they get that opportunity in higher grades?
Correct. So the question is that if I apply in 8th grade for a freshman class, but I'm not offered a spot to go to TJ, can I reapply? And the answer is yes. You can apply as a for what's called our sophomore round. So that happens in the spring of the student's freshman year. We're actually in the middle of our sophomore round right now for rising sophomores next year. And there are always a few students from Loudoun that are in that round. What I would also say is what we see is probably certainly more than half of our students that apply during the sophomore round were students that may have been on our wait list from our freshman round or just didn't get in the freshman year. Generally speaking, those students are looking to reapply, and so they do take that opportunity. That process is a little different, and I won't get into that if we're talking multiple years down the road, but it is a little bit different in terms of what we're looking for in terms of testing and so on.
How you have openings for sophomore year? Just
So the
somebody who starts drops off?
Yes. So we base that on attrition, and so our target number is 480 to 500 students in our freshman class. And some years we have students. So we have students that leave for whatever reason. They move out of the area. They find that TJ just wasn't the school for them for whatever reason. Something happened, right? And they're no longer going to return back to TJ. And so those seats become available. And so that what we do within the sophomore round is we look to refill those seats with new students in the sophomore year. We also have an application round in junior year, but it's really small. It's usually just 1 or 2 students that apply that year. And maybe we get one. I think over the past 6 years, I think we've had 2 students that have been offered through the junior round.
Do students in DJ Max do a lot of the group projects?
Say that again?
Group projects?
Oh, yes. There's a lot of, so in a couple of weeks when we have our TJ Start program, the freshman research, that is actually all done through groups. The senior research is individual, it's independent research, but the freshmen actually are teams of students that perform the research together. So there's a lot of collaboration. The IBIT class is designed that way because it's designed that way and for a couple of reasons. Academic reasons, it's designed so that way all the students are together, because we also know that we're pulling students from maybe as many as over 100 different schools. We probably have anywhere from 150 to 250 different schools each year that have students that apply between public and private schools across our 5 jurisdictions. But what we also know is that in some cases there's only one or two or three or a handful of students that are coming from some of these schools. So when they walk in the door, they don't know anyone. And so we want to also engage them not only academically, but we want to engage them in that social construct of high school as well. And so the idea is we have them teamed together. They have 3 classes that are they're with the same students every day or every other day in the IBIT class. And so they start to establish and foster those relationships and friendships that probably, quite frankly, will last a lifetime for many of these students. And so the idea is that we start to use that collaboration because, quite honestly, that's what life is after school. And you're gearing them up for and building their understandings and their knowledge so that way they know how to function in whatever future endeavor that they're choosing to do. So yes, there is a fair amount of collaboration and group work where students are working together. But these are also students that have very similar kind of concepts and motivations.
Yeah, but that's also the students who are really competitive in life and not really team players.
I'm not so sure I would agree with that. I think that if you were to walk into school and you were in those classrooms, you would find that that cooperation and the collaboration is a lot more so than what you would expect. There is a nature of competitiveness, but that competitiveness is a little bit different in our school than what you would maybe see in some other schools because of kind of the constructs that we put in place within the school. Other questions? Yes?
Going back to the teacher recommendation.
Sure.
So is this something the teacher enters online during a window? So and that's the reason they're prepared or notified in advance?
So what happens? So the kind of the process is that the student enters in the teacher information. So what we're looking at is a name, an email address, a phone number, school, and subject taught. Okay, that's all the student has to enter in. So what happens is when the student enters that in, the system, once it identifies the teacher, it will send the teacher an email saying that this student asked you to write a recommendation for them. And it has a link. And then they click on the link and they log into our system. So if they have an account, they'll just log in using their account. If not, they'll create an account. And then they have the recommendation. So it's a couple part recommendation. Some of it's a questionnaire, and then the rest of it's a text portion of the recommendation. And so they type up responding to the text prompts.
But students do not see this recommendation.
Students do not see it unless the teacher gives it to the student to show. But the students don't have access. It's not as though when I was in high school and I was writing recommendations, I may actually hand the recommendation in an envelope to the student to submit or turn in. Or I may actually hand it to a counselor, depending on what the process was for the university or college. So it is different.
To have dedicated time for that, she probably.
The teachers?
The teachers,
That depends on the school. Some schools provide dedicated time. I certainly, if you're attending school here at Harper Park, I can't say whether that's the case or not. I know there are some schools, based upon the volume of recommendations, that provide that. Provide some time for the teachers to write, but I certainly can't say that that's the case at every school. Well, I can say I know it's not the case at every school. I don't know what you do.
They have in the past, but I'd say generally they don't. I think there was one year they did because there were so many.
But what I will say to that, and I think with your teachers here in Loudon, in terms of writing for both programs, and I don't know what the window is for the academies, but I know we provide a pretty lengthy window so that way the teachers have time. Because we have some teachers that might only write 1 or 2 recommendations for us. But we also have teachers that write as many as 50 and 60 depending upon the school in which they're coming from. So it really is dependent upon the school and the interests of the students. So the schools that have the larger numbers may get a part of a day or something like that and get a little bit more time. And then there's weekends and I think this time frame, if I go back to this schedule, it falls when teacher recommendation is. That falls right around the teacher work days, both for Loudoun and for Fairfax. And so that's an opportunity. I know in previous years, that's where, and let's be honest, we usually always have at least one snow day or ice day or it's going to snow day. There's a day, because it's online, they can do it at home as long as they have access to the internet. They can do that recommendation at home as well. Yeah.
Just curious, for whatever reason, if the teacher is not able to give the recommendation in time, does that go against the kid because the kid hasn't done really anything?
We work with the teachers to ensure. The teacher does have the opportunity to say, hey, I'm not going to be able to do it. And so they'll deny it, and that then opens it up for the student to enter a different teacher in. The student also has, within the application, they kind of have a checklist of where things are at and what things are done, so they can monitor as they're getting closer to the deadline. And this is where we talk to the students, and we actually will say to the students, I recommend that you go and have a conversation with your teacher, actually talk to the teacher. If the teacher is unable to, and there's a legitimate reason, for example, teacher was working on recommendations, halfway through their recommendations, and there's a death in the family and they have to leave. That teacher we may work with providing an extension so that way they still have time to be able to get it in, because we recognize life has happened. And it wasn't, you're exactly right, it wasn't the student's fault that the teacher wasn't able to enter it in. And in that case, it wasn't anyone's fault. It was, it's an unfortunate situation. And so we work with the teachers. We send out reminders to the teachers so that way we remind them that, hey, the deadline's coming up this Friday or the deadline's coming up this Monday, whatever the deadline happens to be that year. Don't forget, you still have outstanding recommendations.
So it's a good idea to have a backup teacher as well.
Based on the volume, look, your son or daughter knows a lot of teachers in 7th or 8th grade. You're talking about, if no teachers are repeated from one year to the next, talking about 14 different teachers probably. Maybe more because some of them are semester teachers.
Right, you're going to have, for teaching, you have a lot of options.
Yeah.
You do for the academies, you have to have your math and your science teacher. I do know sometimes if you get a teacher that only has a couple recommendations to write, they can be like more detailed and depth.
Yep.
Sometimes our math teachers will have to write
A lot.
multiple recommendations. Parents worry because they think are we going to get a great recommendation because the teachers just only have so much time. And so how much weight is to those recommendations? Because I think that is really hard. Sometimes I think our kids not getting in because the teachers weren't thorough enough on the recommendations.
So it's a point. We don't have weights within the application process. It's a holistic approach. And what I mean by that is that, think of it this way. Think of it as a packet or a folder of all the materials, and then we put it down in front of the evaluator, and it's a team of evaluators that read all of those elements. So they read the teacher recommendations, they read the essays, they see the test scores, it's the percentile ranks of the test scores, GPA, that information about the student. And they look at all of that as they go through. I can't speak to how AOS, I always call AOL does, and I still think AOL, by the way, that's hysterical. But anyway, but I can't speak to how the academies go through their selection process because I simply don't know. So I wouldn't be able to give you any information. But we do, and teacher recommendations are important, but they're not the only thing. So quite honestly, teacher recommendations, quite honestly, are supporting what we're seeing in the evidence from what the student's been able to provide to us. That's what we're looking for, right? We're looking for information from the teacher to be able to give us something from another perspective, because we don't know your son or daughter other than a test score and a series of essays, right? That's all we know about the child. The teacher brings that child to life by being able to describe who the student is and explaining who that student is in the classroom and what they've been able to do and what type. And so they bring that student to life, and that's the importance of the teacher recommendation.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I haven't seen anywhere in the application process the information about the, achievements the child has till the application moment.
So are you referring to, like, I was in my Odyssey of Mind, I was on this competition, those types of things?
Yeah.
So, well, actually, I'll stay right here. The essay and SIS, the SIS is the area where that would potentially.
Okay, so that's the.
So the SIS is a series of short answer questions. Thank you very much. The SIS is a series of short answer questions of 3. And that is where the student, based upon the question that's asked, can then relay information about those types of events or opportunities that they have. So let's say for some students, they are in, do you have Odyssey in mind here?
Yeah.
Okay,
I
so,
mean, it's not like, they
okay,
do have.
I'm just
they
using
always
that
have
as an
groups,
example.
yes.
I use it. So a student was in Odyssey of Mind, they went through a competition and did everything that was involved within that. And so the question itself was in a particular area that they then were able to go back to that experience and opportunities and discuss that and use that as a particular example. But the great thing about the student information sheet is your son or daughter was in Odyssey of Mind. His son or daughter was in something completely different. Yours was in something different. And so, but the way the question is written allows them all to kind of speak to their own experiences, their own hopes and dreams. So they can talk about past events depending upon the question, their future events, what the future opportunities. Someone had mentioned about neuroscience, or neurology. Maybe it's very personal. Maybe a family member is suffering from type of disease or ailment and they want to research, they want to find a way. I want to say it may be 10 or 15 years ago, and I want to believe that it was a student from Purcellville, I believe. They had a family member that got Lyme's disease, and they recognized the impact of Lyme's disease, and their research and what they did within their research while they were at TJ was to investigate Lyme's disease. And I believe, if I remember correctly, their research was successful enough that they were able to find an early detection of people that had Lyme's disease, so that way they could get treatment ahead of time before it got so severe. So those are the types of things that students might be able to talk about in the SIS. Now the essay, no, because we're giving them a very specific prompt that they have to work through, solve, and then write about. But the SIS actually addresses that type of. We don't have a section in the application where they kind of put in a resume or here's my list of accomplishments type of thing. We don't have that as a part of the application, not in this application. Okay. Any other questions? Yeah. Transportation. So transportation is a function of Loudoun County. I'm going to talk about the public school portion of it. So there are buses that are run from Loudoun at a depot system. They typically pick up at the middle schools or high schools based upon geography, and then they go to TJ. Now, in this area, they're likely to either go down Route 7 and pop onto the toll road, and then drive in the toll road around the Beltway to the school. If you're not familiar with where TJ's at, it's in the Alexandria portion of Fairfax County. So we're inside the Beltway. It is a little bit of a distance for students that are coming from this area. I'm not going to kid you. It is a factor that the family has to consider when they think of TJ. But we also have, and that runs 5 days a week. It'll drop the kids off at school in the morning, and it'll bring them home at night or in the afternoon.
Same spot they've been.
Yes, it's the same spot. Our school day starts later. Fairfax County functions on a different sequence than what Loudoun does in terms of our high schools start first in the morning. And that actually is a little bit later now than what it used to be. Our high schools used to start at about 7:15 in the morning. That would have been a nightmare for students in Loudoun to get to a school that started at 7:15 that's maybe a 45-minute ride away. And so TJ has always been a late start. We start at 8:30 in the morning, and and we go a little bit later. We go to about 4 o'clock. So unfortunately, they're in rush hour traffic, but they're on a bus, so they get to drive on HOV lanes and whatever. But they do pick up and drop off. But we also have a tremendous parent community that deals with carpools. And one of the first things that happens is as students accept their offers and are getting registered and starting to go through that induction process with TJ, part of the PTSA engages with the students and parents about where do you live, okay? Because if your son or daughter needs to stay after school, we want to deal with, are there carpool opportunities? You know, I work near there, and I'm there 2 days a week, and I work somewhere else at a different site. I actually have to be in the office at 9, so I can take 3 kids with me, right? Because I drive a big enough vehicle that we can load up and we can all ride. You know, I can drop off 2 days a week. You can drop off another day. You know, someone else picks up. We have those types of things that happen. You know, the 3 of us, our kids are all going to be in the theater production. That theater production, you know, is 2 weeks before the release of everything, and so we're really going through heavy rehearsals or stage craft. And so the students are staying until about 6 o'clock every night. You know, you work in DC, and it's like the right time for you to be coming home, and so you just detour past the school and you bring 3 kids home with you. Those types of things occur. I've been in a lot of high schools in Fairfax for many years, and the PTSA at TJ is phenomenal. It is truly phenomenal, and that's just one example. Because they recognize that we're talking about a huge region that we're dealing with. This isn't the community school where the kids can stay after school and walk home or ride their bike home. Very, very few students could actually do that because they're coming from a very large region area. So there is transportation. That is a function of Loudoun County as well. And so, you know, it's something to monitor in terms of that process.
So in days of inclement weather,
That's a
do
good
we
Yes.
rely on Loudoun County's
You
assessment or
you rely on Loudoun.
Okay.
Now, your school year is Fairfax. So our school years don't completely match up. Our days don't completely match up. But in inclement weather, if Loudoun is off, your kids don't go to school. But I will tell you, over the past 4 years, it's been very infrequent that Loudoun is off and Fairfax is not. When I first started working in the area, that happened more frequently. But Fairfax and Loudoun over time, have become much more, kind of synced up in terms of which days they give off based upon the inclement weather. Same thing in the other, obviously if Fairfax is off, even if Loudoun's in, which happens exceptionally rarely, you're not going to school either. But I will say, Fairfax goes a week longer into the summer, starts about a week later than what Loudoun does. Your kids start a week later, they go a week later. And transportation is still provided. So that's not a problem in that aspect. Okay, hand back here. Yeah.
We were referring to some detailed sessions on the application, but do you have dates for that?
The dates are the date of when we're doing the sessions.
Yeah.
No, we don't have those released yet. We're still working on getting all those dates finalized with the different schools, and I quite honestly don't know if the fall I'm here at Harper Park, but the sessions that I've done. I mean, I've been in every single middle school in Loudoun County over the past few years, and it usually goes back and forth between 2 schools will share, and one school will do it this year, then the other school will do it the next year, and we'll bounce back and forth. So you certainly, even if I'm not here at Harper Park, you would be invited to go to another school. So for example, Smarts Mill, which is right here in Leesburg, I know I was at Smarts Mill last fall. I just happen to remember that. You could attend the one in Smarts Mill if I'm not here. But what will happen is your counselor that works with us will send out information that will say, here's the event at our school, or here's the event at the next closest school. But beyond that, on our website, we'll actually put a link up to a Google map, and it will list all, last year I think we were at 47 different school presentations. And unless it's in the school during the day, and if we know that that's the case and it's not open to the public, we won't post it. But any of the ones that are on the website and are posted are open and available for anyone. They're open to the public to attend.
So this is the detailed one, it's different from what we have in now, right?
Yes, there's more detail in that.
And then you probably also have something in TJ itself, in your campus itself,
But it's the same presentation. Yeah, we don't differentiate between Fairfax and Loudoun or Prince William because the students are going through the same process. So we don't make anything different. Yeah.
Do you have events during the year where parents and
Yes.
students can come? Where
Yes,
they can
actually,
explore?
actually, if you're not doing anything tomorrow, we have a huge event that's going on tomorrow. It's called Techstravaganza. And I will tell you, if you have a chance, I think you can still register. I mean, and register is not at a cost. It's just so that they make sure that they have enough stuff. If you can go to the Techstravaganza tomorrow, it's a phenomenal. Anyone here going? No? Okay.
We're going to June Fest.
I think
You're going to it? You're aware of it. Okay. So Techstravaganza is put on by the students, and it's actually, basically it's research that goes on throughout all the school, but it's designed for younger students, and it engages them to be able to pull them into the school. And it's a great opportunity. But there are other events. On our website, we have an outreach page, and it talks about different events and different opportunities that are both hosted at the school, but also we talk about things that are going on within the community. So if there's a regional science expose or something like that, we'll share that information so that way students have the opportunity or families have the opportunity to go and explore and do those things. You know, I mean, we're somewhat blessed being in this region because of the variety of options and opportunities that we have. You know, even just, and I know it costs for parking at the Air and Space Museum here at Dulles, but you know, they have a tremendous amount of different events and things that go on at Uvar Hazy. You know, and then all the different things that are happening within the district. You know, and sometimes you can and you can't make those things. We get it. But we try to provide different types of events and opportunities that are going on and are out in the public. Anything else? Yes? So on an annual basis, we're about 3,000 applicants, and we see about 480 students. So if you take about 500 out of 3,000, it's 1 in 6 students that are receiving admissions from the applicant.
But Loudoun only allows 120 kids.
So
120 kids. We can only send that.
So there are caps. The caps are based upon percentages. What I will say is, based upon the number of applicants and the number of acceptances, Loudoun does very well in terms of getting the students accepted, but we haven't hit our cap for Loudoun. And it's not because Loudoun students are unprepared or just are not competitive. It's a numbers. There's not enough kids that apply to reach that. If they have the same acceptance rate, you would need many more students to apply to be able to get in.
So that being the ratio, is your admission standard over the years, has it evolved or been diluted? Because I know in academies they have tremendously now started diluting the standard of admissions.
No, we've been around for a long time, and so we've actually made changes. I would actually say our math assessment's more rigorous than what it was in previously as well. But it's rigorous in a different way. We're using a different test. It's assessing the students, still using algebra as the baseline, but it's making the students apply the algebra. And so we haven't needed to dilute it. In fact, we've tried to change it so that way it gives us a better idea of who those students
So if the Loudoun County drops out of the program next year, you have more openings for other counties?
Yeah, I mean, we're still seating 480 students at the school. So regardless of whether Loudoun County is or is not, or for that matter, whether another county decides, Alexandria City could choose to start to send students to TJ or have them be as an option, and then that opens up all of those students to potentially apply. So we're still looking for a class of 480 students to go to TJ, where they come from within the different jurisdictions is where it's at. But what I'll say is Loudon is behind Fairfax, which is obvious because we carry the bulk of the student applicants and so on. But Loudon's our second largest student population at TJ.
About how many students do you get admitted from Loudon each year?
Under 100, but it's not far under 100. I would say it's probably 75 to 80 is probably average. Maybe 90 students is offered. But also we have students that are offered at both AOS or the academy programs and TJ, and so some students will choose to go to the academy program. But yeah, it's a fair amount of students that get offers within, and I certainly don't know specifically for Hartford. That I don't know. I don't walk around. I have a lot of numbers, but that's one number that I don't know. But we do have a fair number of students that are coming from Loudon every year.
For the second year applications from sophomore, did I understand correctly that they have to be rejected or waitlisted in the first one?
No.
It can be fresh, anyone who wants to apply?
We completely wipe the slate clean.
Okay.
And you could have applied or you didn't have it, but you didn't have
starting from
it. It is completely new. Yeah, if you apply as a sophomore.
So, and the TJ, you don't have like sort of differentiation, like the Loudon of science, they have like the engineering program and like
No, so we don't
have sort of like, you know,
so
biology
the academy program is, my understanding, the academy program has 3 programs in one. It was the merging of the Academy of Science, the Academy of Engineering and Technology, and then the Monroe Tech all came together and are under one roof in the new building off of, I believe it's Sicklin Road. And so they have a program. I think the engineering program is kind of a tier program where it's a 9-10 program and then 11-12 program, I believe.
Yes. You have to do 2 years, but you can go on.
And then you can go on. Within TJ, we all are under the same roof. So it's, some students kind of have hybrids where they're kind of in 2 different kind of labs. If you look at our lab offerings, many students will work in the prototyping lab, but they'll also work in other labs as well, or they may be based on what they're kind of looking at.
so they don't have to choose.
Well, they'll have to choose to some degree because they're
but
going
not
to
when
select.
they apply to the
Yes. So you're not applying to a lab, you're applying to the school. But you're going to, once you are offered and you go into the school, you accept your offer, based on your elective course selections, there are some prerequisites. So let's say I want to be in the neuroscience lab, I want to do something in neurology. There are certain courses to be able to get me to where I want to go, and our counselors say, okay, based upon where you kind of want to go, freshman year, that doesn't matter, because almost everyone takes the same prescriptive kind of freshman year. But sophomores, juniors, seniors say, okay, well, I'm really interested in this, so I'm going to navigate my way here, where someone else may go over this way, type of idea.
Do you have dual enrollment classes?
No, we do not. Well, not in the traditional standard where I'm going to go to Mason or I'm going to go to Nova class or whatever. Some of our students that are in their research, we find that their research is not best conducted at site, and so we have places where they can do like an internship type of thing where they do
the
their
Loudon
research.
County have their
That's different.
wonderful dual enrollment classes where
Yep.
you get your
Yep.
college credit
Well,
without
so-
going through AP exam.
You can do that. There are some opportunities where you will get college credit, but not necessarily are you going to go to another school to be able to do that.
In Loudon County they don't go to dual
No. I mean, the dual enrollment piece is different when it comes to what happens at TJ. Yeah, but but I think in terms of how it's administered, there is some differences between what we traditionally think in a standard high school in terms of dual enrollment. There are some differences there. Okay. Any other questions?
And,
Yeah.
and the AP
Hold
classes.
on one second.
Coming to the reading test, there are 3
sections in that. So 3 sections valued equally, graded equally, or like
What three, which?
the sections, I mean, math, science.
Oh, for the math, for the test, they are weighted equally, but the performance that you have to produce is different. So on the math test, minimum, you have to be at the 50th percentile.
Okay.
For reading and science, you have to be at a minimum, you have to be at the 75th percentile. And then we have a higher percentile that you have to reach on either the math or the science. So on the math, you either have to reach the 75th percentile. On the science, you have to reach the 90th percentile. We have that on our website. I didn't include it here in the slides, but it basically says you can score not quite as good or be not quite as strong in your math if you're really strong in science, or vice versa. And then reading is just 75 and above. Okay. All right. Anything else that you'd like to share with them?
I
know I've used up a lot of
Right,
time.
yes, thank you so
Well,
much. Right, but continue to, let's just, we have to see what happens. And hopefully we'll be able to get students into TJ.
Absolutely.
So thank you for coming.
Appreciate it.
Have
Thank you.
a similar session.
Oh, no, you had an open house, isn't the open house coming up too?
No, we don't have it. Well, that's
Something.
changed.
Oh, that was for the kids, oh,